A single mother faces the nightmare no parent ever expects, her adopted daughter's life hanging by a thread in a hospital room, while doctors struggle to make sense of a rare, sudden condition. But one constant remains, her scrappy shelter dog, refusing to leave the child's side, alert and vigilant in ways no human can explain. Every beep of the monitors, every subtle shift in the child's breathing, seems to trigger something extraordinary in the dog. Staff insist he must go, citing rules and safety. But what if his presence is the only thing keeping her alive? As the mother races against time, she discovers a shocking truth about her loyal companion. Something that changes everything she thought she knew. Can a dog see what even doctors cannot? And in a world where every second counts, will this unlikely hero be enough to save a life? Or is it already too late? Through the sterile hallways of Chicago Memorial Hospital, the steady beep of medical equipment echoed like a worried heartbeat. Veronica Hale's hands trembled as she clutched her daughter's small backpack, still filled with the coloring books and crayons from their interrupted morning. Just hours ago, they'd been having breakfast. Lila had been pushing her cereal around the bowl, making little waves with her spoon, when she suddenly clutched her chest and started breathing funny. Now, surrounded by white walls and the sharp smell of antiseptic, everything felt surreal. "Mrs. Hale?" A doctor in a crisp white coat approached, his clipboard held tight against his chest. "I'm Dr. Marcus. We've reviewed Lila's tests." Veronica straightened up from the uncomfortable waiting room chair, her heart pounding. Bront, their brindle-coated shelter dog, pressed against her leg, his warm presence steadying her. "Please, just tell me what's wrong with my baby," Veronica whispered. Dr. Marcus's face softened. "Lila has a congenital heart condition, one that's quite rare. Her heart isn't pumping blood efficiently, and we're seeing signs of rapid deterioration." The words hit Veronica like a physical blow. She grabbed the wall for support, and Bront immediately shifted his weight to brace her. "But she was fine," Veronica protested, her voice cracking. "She was just playing in the yard yesterday with Bront. She was laughing." "These conditions can remain hidden for years," Dr. Marcus explained gently. "Sometimes they only become apparent when the heart starts to fail." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Dr. Marcus, the patient is asking for her mother." Veronica rushed to follow the nurse, Bront trotting close behind. In the pediatric room, Lila looked tiny against the white hospital sheets. Tubes and wires connected her to beeping machines, but her face lit up when she saw them. "Mommy! Bront!" Lila's voice was weak, but her smile was as bright as ever. "Hey, sweetheart." Veronica carefully sat on the edge of the bed, taking Lila's small hand in hers. Bront tried to jump up too, but a nurse stepped forward. "I'm sorry, but the dog needs to leave. Hospital policy." "No!" Lila's cry was immediate, her heart monitor beeping faster. "Please, I want Bront to stay!" Bront planted his feet firmly on the floor, his eyes fixed on Lila with unwavering focus. When another nurse tried to guide him towards the door, he simply sat down, refusing to budge. "Ma'am," the first nurse said to Veronica, "we really can't have animals in here. It's a matter of hygiene and hospital regulations." Veronica felt torn between hospital rules and her daughter's distress. "He's clean, and he's gentle. Could we maybe—" "Absolutely not," the nurse interrupted. "This is a critical care unit." But as they tried again to remove Bront, something strange happened. The dog's demeanor changed. He wasn't aggressive, but his posture became alert, his eyes intensely focused on Lila. He gave a low whine and pawed at the floor. "What's wrong, boy?" Veronica asked, recognizing something different in his behavior. Seconds later, Lila's heart monitor started beeping erratically. The little girl's face had gone pale, and she was struggling to breathe. "Code Blue!" a nurse shouted, and suddenly the room was flooding with medical staff. Through the chaos, Bront remained perfectly still, his eyes never leaving Lila. It wasn't until the crisis passed, a dangerous arrhythmia that the medical team quickly controlled, that Veronica realized what had happened. Somehow, Bront had sensed the episode coming before any of the machines had picked it up. Dr. Marcus, who had witnessed the entire scene, pulled Veronica aside once Lila was stable. "Mrs. Hale, I've seen therapy dogs and service animals before, but your dog, there might be something special there. Some dogs have been known to detect medical issues before they become apparent. Given Lila's condition, having him here might actually be beneficial." Veronica wiped tears from her eyes, watching as Bront finally settled down next to Lila's bed, his head resting near her hand. "He was just supposed to be a companion," she said softly. "We got him from the shelter 3 months ago. His papers were lost. We don't even know his background." "Sometimes the best guardians find us by chance," Dr. Marcus replied. He made a note on his clipboard. "I'll speak with hospital administration about getting him cleared to stay." Back in the room, Lila had drifted off to sleep, one hand resting on Bront's head. Veronica sank into the bedside chair, exhausted and overwhelmed. The morning's terror had given way to a heavy, aching worry that settled in her chest like a stone. "What am I going to do?" she whispered to herself. Bront lifted his head and gave a soft woof, as if answering her. His eyes, warm and determined, seemed to say he wasn't going anywhere. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Through the sterile hospital corridors, the steady beep of monitors created a rhythmic backdrop to Veronica's racing thoughts. She hadn't moved from her chair beside Lila's bed for hours, alternating between watching her daughter's peaceful sleep and observing Bront's peculiar behavior. The dog lay alert at the foot of the bed, his ears twitching at every change in the monitor's rhythm. What caught Veronica's attention wasn't just his stillness, but the way his head would lift seconds before any fluctuation in Lila's vitals. Each time the numbers on the screen wavered, Bront's muscles would tense, his eyes fixed intently on her daughter. "Mrs. Hale?" A nurse appeared in the doorway, her expression stern. "I need to discuss the dog situation." Veronica straightened in her chair, already feeling defensive. "He's been perfectly well behaved." "That's not the point," the nurse replied, crossing her arms. "We have protocols. Other patients could have allergies, and there's the matter of maintaining a sterile environment." As if on cue, Bront's head snapped up, his attention laser-focused on Lila. Seconds later, the heart monitor showed a slight irregularity, causing the nurse to hurry over and check the readings. "Did you see that?" Veronica asked, pointing between Bront and the monitor. "He knew before it happened. He's been doing this all morning." The nurse shook her head dismissively. "Mrs. Hale, I understand you're under stress, but you're attributing abilities to this animal that simply aren't possible." "With all due respect," a deep voice interjected from the doorway, "we shouldn't be too quick to dismiss unusual observations." Dr. Malcolm Rivers stepped into the room, his presence commanding immediate attention. The renowned pediatric cardiologist carried himself with quiet authority, his salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses adding to his distinguished appearance. "Dr. Rivers," the nurse acknowledged, stepping back, "I was just explaining our policy regarding animals in the ward." "Yes, I'm familiar with the policy." He moved to examine Lila's charts. "I'm also familiar with documented cases of animals detecting medical conditions before conventional methods, though I admit I'm generally skeptical of such claims." Veronica watched as he studied the monitoring equipment, his expression thoughtful. "Doctor, I know how it sounds, but Bront's behavior, it's not normal. He's responding to something." Dr. Rivers raised an eyebrow, glancing at the dog. "Mrs. Hale, While I appreciate your conviction, we need to focus on measurable medical factors. Lila's condition is complex, and... He was interrupted by Bront suddenly standing, a low whine escaping his throat. The dog's gaze was fixed on Lila, his body tense. Within moments, the monitors showed another irregularity in Lila's heartbeat. Dr. Rivers frowned, checking the timestamp on the readings. That's interesting timing. That's what I've been trying to tell you, Veronica insisted, her voice thick with emotion. He's been doing this consistently. He knows something's wrong before your machines do. The doctor adjusted his glasses, his scientific mindset clearly warring with what he'd just witnessed. Correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, Mrs. Hale. However, he paused, watching as Bront settled back down, still alert. I suppose there's no harm in documenting these incidents. Nurse, please make a note of the dog's behavior patterns in relation to any changes in Lila's vitals. The nurse looked like she wanted to object, but nodded professionally. Yes, doctor. As the afternoon wore on, Lila's condition stabilized somewhat. The critical episodes became less frequent, allowing Veronica a moment to breathe. She used the time to really study Bront, wondering about his background. What had they missed when they'd adopted him? The shelter had said his paperwork was lost, that he was just another stray. But watching him now, his unwavering focus and intelligent eyes suggested training of some kind. Your dog, Dr. Rivers said quietly, returning to check on Lila. How long have you had him? 3 months, Veronica replied, running her hand along Bront's back. He bonded with Lila immediately. We thought it was just sweet, but now... Now you're wondering if it was something more, Dr. Rivers finished, nodding thoughtfully. While I can't base medical decisions on canine behavior, I'm not entirely dismissing what I've seen today. Perhaps we could set up some monitoring parameters, document any correlations between his reactions and Lila's symptoms. Veronica felt a spark of hope at his words. Even this small acknowledgement from someone of his standing meant something. Thank you, doctor. I know it seems strange. In medicine, Mrs. Hale, we sometimes encounter things we can't immediately explain. The key is to observe carefully and document accurately. He made several notes in Lila's chart. For now, I'll authorize Bront to stay, provided he remains well-behaved and doesn't interfere with medical procedures. As Dr. Rivers left the room, Veronica felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. She'd found an ally, albeit a skeptical one. Bront shifted closer to her, laying his head on her lap as if sensing her relief. Looking down at him, she couldn't help but wonder what other secrets this ordinary shelter dog might be hiding. Through the sterile hospital corridors, the steady beep of monitors created a nerve-wracking rhythm that followed Veronica everywhere. She sat beside Lila's bed, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall with each breath. Bront remained vigilant at the foot of the bed, his eyes never leaving Lila for more than a few seconds. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hale, but the dog really needs to leave. Nurse Carter stood in the doorway, arms crossed. We've been lenient, but hospital policy is clear. Veronica straightened in her chair. Dr. Rivers approved his presence. He's documenting Bront's behavior. Dr. Rivers isn't here right now, and I have other patients to consider. The nurse's voice carried an edge of frustration. What if someone on this floor is allergic? Then we'll deal with that if it happens, Veronica said firmly, her hand instinctively reaching for Bront. But he's not leaving. As if on cue, Bront's head snapped up, his ears forward. A low whine escaped his throat. Veronica immediately checked the monitors, her heart racing. Within seconds, Lila's oxygen levels dipped slightly. There. Did you see that? Veronica pointed at the screen. He knew before the machines did. Nurse Carter stepped closer, frowning at the readings. It's a minor fluctuation, perfectly normal for her condition. But he knew it was coming, Veronica insisted. He's been doing this consistently? The nurse opened her mouth to argue further, but Dr. Rivers chose that moment to enter the room, his timing impeccable. He carried a thick notebook, which he'd been using to document Brandt's behavior patterns. Ah, good. Another reaction? He moved to check the monitors, making quick notes. What were his physical cues this time? Head up, ears forward, that worried whine, Veronica reported, grateful for his presence. About 15 seconds before the oxygen drop. Dr. Rivers nodded, writing carefully. Similar to the pattern we observed this morning. Nurse Carter, please note the time and nature of the dog's reaction in Lila's chart. The nurse's lips pressed into a thin line, but she complied, adding the information to Lila's medical record. Veronica could see the conflict in the woman's face, the struggle between professional skepticism and the undeniable pattern emerging. Throughout the afternoon, they continued their careful observation. Brandt's reactions became more noticeable, more precise. He would shift position or whine softly before each change in Lila's vital signs, sometimes minor, sometimes more significant. During one particularly telling incident, Brandt suddenly stood up, his whole body tense. Before anyone could react, Lila's heart rate began to spike dangerously. "Code Blue," Dr. Rivers called out, already moving to action. "Get a crash cart in here." The room erupted into controlled chaos as medical staff rushed in. Through it all, Brandt remained eerily calm, watching intently as they stabilized Lila. His behavior was nothing like a typical dog's reaction to such commotion. No barking, no agitation, just focused attention. Once Lila was stable again, Dr. Rivers pulled Veronica aside. "Mrs. Hale, I've been reviewing the data we've collected." He opened his notebook, showing her pages of detailed observations. "There's a clear pattern here. Brandt's reactions precede measurable changes in Lila's condition by an average of 12 to 20 seconds. "You believe me now?" Veronica asked, hope creeping into her voice. "Let's say I'm professionally intrigued." He adjusted his glasses. "In my 25 years of practice, I've never seen anything quite like this. The consistency is remarkable." A new nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Dr. Rivers, administration, wants to speak with you about the dog situation." The doctor sighed. "Of course they do." He turned to Veronica. "I'll handle this. Continue logging any reactions while I'm gone." As Dr. Rivers left to deal with hospital bureaucracy, Veronica settled back into her chair. Brandt moved closer, resting his head on her knee. She scratched behind his ears, studying him with newfound wonder. "What are you?" she whispered. "Where did you really come from?" The shelter had said he was just another stray, but his behavior suggested specialized training. The way he stayed calm during medical emergencies, his precise reactions to subtle changes in Lila's condition, it all pointed to something more. A soft whimper from Brandt drew her attention back to Lila. The monitors showed another small change in her vital signs, right on cue. Veronica carefully documented the time and Brandt's behavior, adding to Dr. Rivers' growing collection of evidence. Through the window, she could see Dr. Rivers in animated discussion with hospital administrators. His hands moved as he spoke, gesturing occasionally toward Lila's room. Even from a distance, she could read the conviction in his stance. "Your timing is perfect," she told Brandt, watching as more hospital officials joined the discussion outside. "We just needed someone to pay attention long enough to see what you can do." The dog's only response was to press closer to her, his eyes never leaving Lila. His dedication went beyond simple pet loyalty. There was purpose in his vigilance, training in his reactions. With each documented incident, the truth became clearer. Bront was more than just a family pet. He was a guardian with abilities they were only beginning to understand. Dr. Rivers returned, looking somewhat battle-worn, but satisfied. Good news. I've convinced administration to allow a formal observation period. We'll be documenting everything. Bront's reactions, their timing, correlation with medical events. They're not happy about it, but they can't argue with the data we've already collected. Thank you, Veronica breathed. I know you're putting your reputation on the line here. Sometimes good medicine means following the evidence, even when it leads somewhere unexpected. He checked Lila's latest readings. Whatever your dog is, whatever training he might have had, he's showing us something important. We'd be fools to ignore it. The hospital administrator, Ms. Peterson, stood in Lila's room with her arms crossed, her navy blazer creasing at the elbows. Mrs. Hale, I understand your position, but we have protocols in place for good reasons. The liability issues alone. With all due respect, Veronica interrupted, her voice tight with restraint. My daughter's life matters more than your liability concerns. She placed her hand protectively on Bront's head as he sat alert beside Lila's bed. Mrs. Hale. No, Veronica said firmly. You haven't been here watching what this dog can do. He's saved her. Twice now? Twice. Dr. Rivers cleared his throat from the doorway. If I may. He entered, carrying Lila's chart. I've been reviewing some concerning inconsistencies in the initial diagnosis. He spread several papers across the rolling table. The early symptoms don't completely align with our first assessment. Ms. Peterson's expression softened slightly. What are you suggesting, Doctor? I'm suggesting that we need every tool at our disposal right now, including, he gestured toward Bront, unconventional ones. This dog has demonstrated an uncanny ability to detect changes in Lila's condition before our equipment does. Veronica watched the interaction, feeling a surge of gratitude toward Dr. Rivers. Over the past days, she'd seen him transform from skeptic to ally, his scientific curiosity overtaking his initial dismissiveness. Look at these readings, he continued, pointing to a series of timestamps. In each instance, the dog's behavior preceded measurable changes by 15 to 20 seconds. That's not coincidence. A young nurse poked her head in. Dr. Rivers, lab results are back. He took the papers, scanning them quickly, his brow furrowed. These numbers support what I was saying. The original diagnosis isn't telling the whole story. Ms. Peterson shifted her weight, uncomfortable with the mounting evidence. Even if what you're saying is true, we can't simply ignore hospital policy. Sometimes policy needs to bend, Veronica said quietly, but with steel in her voice. Sometimes doing the right thing means taking a risk. Bront suddenly lifted his head, focusing intently on Lila. Within seconds, the heart monitor showed a slight irregularity. There, Dr. Rivers said, pointing to the screen. Document that, timestamp it. He turned to Ms. Peterson. That's what we've been seeing. The dog knows before our machines do. The administrator watched the scene unfold, her professional facade cracking slightly. I'll need to consult with the board, she said finally. In the meantime, she paused, choosing her words carefully. In the meantime, maintain current arrangements. After she left, Veronica released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Thank you, she said to Dr. Rivers, for backing me up. He nodded, still studying the lab results. These numbers are interesting. There's something we're missing. He pulled up a chair, spreading the papers out. Would you mind walking me through Lila's earliest symptoms again? Sometimes fresh eyes help. As they talked, Veronica found herself drawn into his methodical approach, his genuine interest in solving the puzzle of Lila's condition. He listened intently, asking careful questions, noting details she hadn't thought significant. The fatigue started first, she explained, watching Lila sleep. Then the dizziness. The doctors initially thought it was just a virus. And Brant's behavior changed when? Almost immediately. He wouldn't leave her side, even before we knew. Anything was wrong. She smiled slightly. I thought he was being overprotective. Dr. Rivers made another note. Animals often sense things we miss. There are documented cases of dogs detecting cancers, predicting seizures. He looked at Brant thoughtfully. Though I've never seen anything quite like this. A group of interns passed by the door, doing rounds. Several of them slowed, trying to catch a glimpse of the now famous dog. Word had spread through the hospital about Brant's unusual abilities. They're calling him the miracle dog, Dr. Rivers said, following her gaze, though I prefer to think of him as a highly sophisticated early warning system we don't yet understand. Veronica watched as Brant adjusted his position, maintaining constant contact with Lila's bed. His dedication never wavered, his attention never strayed. Whatever training or instinct drove him, she was deeply grateful for it. I won't let them take him, she said quietly. I can't. Not when he might be the difference between catching a problem in time or… She couldn't finish the sentence. Dr. Rivers placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll figure this out. The medicine and the bureaucracy. Sometimes good patient care means thinking outside conventional boundaries. Brant's head suddenly snapped up, his posture alert but calm. They both turned to the monitors, watching. Sure enough, 15 seconds later, Lila's oxygen levels dipped slightly. Record that, Dr. Rivers said unnecessarily. Veronica was already writing it down in the log they'd been keeping. Each documented incident was another piece of evidence, another argument for Brant's presence. As she wrote, Veronica felt her resolve strengthening. She would fight whatever battles needed fighting, challenge whatever rules stood in their way. With Dr. Rivers' support and Brant's inexplicable abilities, she had hope. For now, that would have to be enough. The quiet beeping of monitors filled the hospital room as evening settled in. Veronica sat beside Lila's bed, her hand resting gently on her daughter's small arm. Brant lay alert at the foot of the bed, his eyes never leaving Lila's face. Suddenly, Brant's head shot up, his muscles tensed, and a low whine escaped his throat. Veronica recognized the warning sign immediately. Something's wrong, she said, reaching for the call button. Before she could press it, Lila's monitors erupted in a cacophony of alarms. Her daughter's face had turned ashen, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. Dr. Rivers burst through the door, followed by 2 nurses. What happened? Brant warned us first, Veronica said, stepping back to give them room. He knew before the machines. The medical team worked quickly, checking vitals and administering medication. Veronica watched, her heart pounding, as Dr. Rivers examined Lila with focused intensity. Temperature's spiking, one nurse announced. 103.2. Dr. Rivers frowned. This isn't following the pattern we'd expect with her heart condition. He pressed his stethoscope to different points on Lila's chest, listening intently. There's something else going on here. Brant paced at the foot of the bed, his agitation growing. He kept returning to one spot near Lila's right side, nosing at the blanket insistently. Look at him, Veronica said, pointing. He's trying to tell us something. Dr. Rivers watched the dog's behavior carefully. Pull back the covers on that side, he instructed the nurses. As they did, he ran his hands along Lila's ribs, pressing gently. When he reached a certain point, Lila flinched even in her semi-conscious state. There's tenderness here, he muttered, and slight swelling. He turned to one of the nurses. Get me a portable ultrasound. Now, The machine arrived quickly. Dr. Rivers applied the gel and moved the wand across Lila's side, studying the screen intently. His expression changed from concentration to revelation. "There's a pocket of fluid here," he announced, "hidden deep in the tissue. It could be an abscess, maybe from an undetected infection." He looked at Veronica. This could explain why her symptoms have been so erratic. The infection's been masquerading as heart problems, making her condition appear worse than it actually is. Veronica felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. "Can you treat it?" "Once we identify the type of infection, yes. We'll need to draw a sample and start broad-spectrum antibiotics immediately." He turned to the nurses. "Page Dr. Chen in infectious diseases, and get me a full panel of blood work, stat." Throughout the procedure, Bront remained fixated on the spot where Dr. Rivers had found the infection. His behavior had shifted from agitated to watchful, as if he knew they'd finally understood his warning. "The dog knew," Dr. Rivers said, shaking his head in amazement. "He's been trying to tell us all along. The changes in vitals we've been recording, they weren't just about her heart. They were responses to the infection." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Dr. Chen arrived, examined Lila, and confirmed Dr. Rivers' suspicions. They extracted a sample from the infected area and rushed it to the lab for analysis. "Without finding this," Dr. Chen explained, "we could have continued treating her for the wrong thing. The infection would have gotten worse, potentially causing serious complications." Veronica sat heavily in her chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. If it weren't for Bront— "Your instincts were right," Dr. Rivers said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Both about keeping him here and about believing something else was wrong. Sometimes medicine isn't just about what we can see on tests and monitors." Through it all, Bront maintained his vigilant watch, responding with subtle changes in posture and attention to each shift in Lila's condition. His accuracy was unmistakable. Each time he alerted, the monitors would confirm his warning moments later. The initial lab results came back, confirming a severe bacterial infection. The medical team adjusted Lila's treatment immediately, adding powerful antibiotics to her medication regimen. "We'll need to monitor her closely," Dr. Rivers explained, "but now that we know what we're dealing with, we can fight it properly." He smiled at Bront. "Thanks to our four-legged diagnostic assistant." As if understanding the praise, Bront wagged his tail once, then returned to his watchful position beside Lila. His dedication never wavered. His attention never strayed from his young charge. Veronica reached down to scratch behind his ears. "Good boy," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Such a good boy." Dr. Rivers made some final notes in Lila's chart. "I'm going to update the medical board about this development," he said, "and about Bront's role in the discovery. I think even the most skeptical administrator will have to acknowledge his importance now." The monitors showed Lila's vital signs beginning to stabilize as the new medications took effect. Her color improved slightly, and her breathing became more regular. Bront's posture relaxed incrementally, though he remained alert and attentive. Dr. Rivers paused at the door. "You know, in all my years of practice, I've learned that healing comes in many forms. Sometimes it's high-tech machines and advanced medications. And sometimes," he smiled at Bront, "it's the simple wisdom of a dog who knows more than we do." Hospital Administrator Sarah Chen strode into Lila's room the next morning, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her pressed suit and stern expression made it clear this wasn't a friendly visit. 2 security guards waited just outside the door. "Mrs. Hale," she said, her voice clipped. "We need to discuss the dog situation immediately." Veronica straightened in her chair beside Lila's bed, where Bront lay vigilant as always. "After what happened yesterday?" "Yes, I've read Dr. Rivers' report," Administrator Chen cut in. "While the medical breakthrough is remarkable, it doesn't change hospital protocols. We simply cannot allow animals to remain in patient rooms. The risk of contamination. Bront saved my daughter's life, Veronica interrupted, her voice tight with emotion. He detected an infection that your entire medical staff missed. That was a fortunate coincidence. Administrator Chen pulled out a thick folder. Our hygiene protocols exist for a reason. We've already received complaints from other parents about a dog being allowed on the pediatric floor, not to mention the liability issues. Bront's ears perked up as Lila stirred slightly in her sleep. His eyes tracked every tiny movement, just as they had been doing since her admission. This isn't about liability, Veronica said. This is about my daughter's survival. The administrator's expression hardened. Mrs. Hale, I understand you're under tremendous stress, but rules exist to protect all our patients. We're prepared to be generous. You have until 5 o'clock this evening to make arrangements for the dog. No. Veronica stood up, her hands trembling but her voice steady. I won't risk my daughter's life because of bureaucratic rules. This isn't a request. Administrator Chen nodded toward the security guards. If necessary, we'll remove the animal ourselves. Stop right there. Dr. Rivers appeared in the doorway, his white coat wrinkled from a long shift, but his presence commanding. Administrator Chen, we need to talk. Dr. Rivers, with all due respect, this isn't a medical decision. It's about hospital policy. Actually, it is a medical decision. He held up a tablet displaying Lila's charts. That dog has demonstrated an extraordinary ability to detect changes in Lila's condition before our monitors do. He's essentially functioning as an early warning system. That's hardly scientific. I've documented 17 separate incidents where the dog alerted us to vital sign changes before our equipment registered them, Dr. Rivers continued. That's not coincidence. That's empirical evidence. Administrator Chen's lips thinned. Doctor, you can't possibly suggest we ignore established protocols because of a dog's supposed abilities. What I'm suggesting, Dr. Rivers said firmly, is that we put patient care first. Isn't that what these protocols are meant to ensure? Veronica moved closer to Lila's bed, one hand on Bront's head. The dog remained focused on Lila but leaned slightly against Veronica's leg in silent support. We could face serious repercussions, Administrator Chen warned. The health department will be very interested in how a rescue dog detected a life-threatening infection that our standard procedures missed, Dr. Rivers finished. I'm preparing a paper on this case. Several of my colleagues are already interested in studying Bront's capabilities further. The administrator's resolve wavered slightly. Even if what you're saying is true, we need proper documentation, waivers. I'll sign whatever you need, Veronica said quickly. I'll take full responsibility. It's not that simple. As if on cue, Bront suddenly lifted his head and whined softly. Within seconds, Lila's heart monitor showed a slight irregularity in her rhythm. Dr. Rivers quickly checked the readings. See? He knew before the machines did. This is the kind of early warning that could mean the difference between life and death. Administrator Chen watched as nurses responded to Bront's alert, adjusting Lila's medication. The numbers on the monitor gradually returned to normal. I'll need to consult with the board, she said finally. In the meantime, she hesitated, looking from Bront to Veronica to Dr. Rivers. In the meantime, the dog can stay, provided you sign extensive liability waivers and agree to additional sanitization protocols. Thank you, Veronica breathed. Don't thank me yet, Administrator Chen warned. This is temporary, and if there's any incident, any at all, there won't be, Veronica assured her. Bront hasn't left Lila's side since we arrived. He's more careful than some of your staff. The administrator's expression suggested she didn't appreciate the comparison, but she merely nodded stiffly and turned to leave. I'll have legal draw up the paperwork. After she left, Dr. Rivers smiled tiredly at Veronica. Well, that's one battle won. But be prepared. This isn't over. I know, Veronica said, sinking back into her chair. But I'll fight whatever battles I have to. Bront stays. The dog glanced at her briefly, as if acknowledging her words, then returned to his watchful guard over Lila. His dedication remained unwavering, a silent testament to the bond that transcended hospital protocols and human skepticism. Through the window, Veronica could see other parents stopping to stare, some frowning, others curious. She knew the pressure would continue, that Administrator Chen and others would look for any excuse to enforce their rules. But watching Bront's gentle vigilance over her daughter, she knew she'd made the right choice. Sometimes, Dr. Rivers said softly, the best medicine isn't in any protocol. He patted Bront's head gently. Keep up the good work, boy. We're learning to trust your instincts. Dr. Rivers burst into Lila's room, clutching a stack of papers with such excitement that he nearly dropped them. I found it, he exclaimed, startling Veronica from her half-doze in the chair beside Lila's bed. Bront's ears perked up, but he didn't move from his position next to Lila. Found what? Veronica straightened, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Bront's history. Dr. Rivers spread the papers across the small bedside table. I've been making calls all week, trying to trace his background. The shelter's records were incomplete because he was transferred between multiple facilities. But look at this. He pointed to a faded document with a familiar logo. He was originally part of a specialized trauma response program. These dogs were trained to detect physiological changes in patients, heart rate variations, blood pressure shifts, even subtle chemical changes that occur before seizures or cardiac events. Veronica leaned forward, her heart racing. You mean he's actually trained for this? Exactly. Dr. Rivers nodded enthusiastically. The program shut down due to funding cuts, and their dogs were distributed to various shelters. Somehow Bront's training documentation got separated from his adoption papers. The shelter thought he was just another rescue dog. Veronica reached out to touch Bront's soft fur. All this time, you knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you, boy? Bront thumped his tail once against the floor but kept his eyes on Lila. This changes everything, Dr. Rivers continued. With this documentation, we can officially classify him as a medical support animal. It gives us grounds to keep him here, protocol or no protocol. He pulled out another sheet. Look at these training certificates. Blood sugar detection, cardiac anomaly response, seizure prediction. He's basically a four-legged early warning system. No wonder he's been so accurate with Lila's symptoms. But how does this help us moving forward? Veronica asked, thinking of the upcoming surgery that loomed over them like a storm cloud. Dr. Rivers pulled up a chair. I've been reviewing Lila's case with the surgical team. Given Bront's abilities, I want to modify our monitoring approach. We'll still use all standard equipment, but I want to document Bront's reactions as an additional data point. He sketched out a quick diagram. We'll set up a camera system to track his behavior patterns. When he alerts, we'll cross-reference it with Lila's vitals. This could give us crucial early warnings about changes in her condition. Veronica studied the papers, her fingers tracing the training certificates. All this time, I thought I was just being stubborn, insisting he stay. But something in me knew he was special. Mother's intuition, Dr. Rivers smiled, combined with some extraordinary canine training. Speaking of which, he pulled out his phone and showed her a series of photos. I've been logging Bront's alert behaviors. See how he positions himself differently depending on the type of change he's detecting? When it's a heart rhythm issue, he puts his head on the bed. For blood pressure drops, he paces and whines. Veronica leaned closer, amazed at the pattern she hadn't consciously noticed. That's exactly what he does. We're going to brief the entire surgical team on his signals, Dr. Rivers explained. Everyone needs to know what to watch for. This could give us precious extra minutes of warning if something starts to go wrong during the procedure. A nurse entered with Lila's evening medications, and Brant's head lifted slightly, tracking her movements. The nurse smiled, no longer showing the wariness she'd displayed in the early days. "He's quite the professional, isn't he?" she commented, checking Lila's IV lines. "Hard to believe we tried to kick him out." "Professional is right," Dr. Rivers agreed. "He's probably got more specialized training than some of our staff." The nurse laughed, then grew serious. "Will he be allowed in the surgical prep area?" "We're working on a modified protocol," Dr. Rivers answered. "He'll need to be thoroughly cleaned and wear a special suit to maintain sterility. But yes, we want him there. His alerts could be crucial during the critical phases of the operation." Veronica felt tears welling up. All the battles she'd fought to keep Brant by Lila's side. All the times she'd trusted her gut against the hospital's rules. It hadn't just been emotional attachment. She'd been right all along. "There's something else," Dr. Rivers said softly. "These trauma response dogs, they were specifically chosen for their emotional intelligence and stability. They had to stay calm in crisis situations while maintaining absolute focus on their patients." He gestured to Brant, still stationed by Lila's bed. "He's not just monitoring her vital signs, he's providing a kind of emotional support that none of our machines can match." Veronica watched as Lila stirred slightly in her sleep, and Brant immediately shifted closer, his presence both protective and soothing. The little girl settled without fully waking, her hand automatically reaching for the dog's fur. "I've already started documenting everything," Dr. Rivers continued. "With your permission, I'd like to write this up as a case study. It could help other hospitals understand the value of properly trained support animals in critical care situations." "Of course," Veronica nodded. "Anything that might help other families." Dr. Rivers gathered his papers, carefully organizing them. "We'll meet with the surgical team tomorrow to coordinate everything. For now, just know that we're all taking Brant's abilities seriously. No more battles with administration. He's officially part of Lila's care team." As if understanding, Brant lifted his head and gave a soft woof. "That's right, boy," Dr. Rivers smiled. "You're on duty, and we're very glad to have you." The surgical preparation room buzzed with activity as nurses and technicians moved purposefully around Lila's bed. Veronica watched from the corner, her heart racing despite her attempts to stay calm. Brant sat beside her, wearing a specially modified surgical suit that covered most of his body, complete with booties on his paws. "It's like he knows he's part of the medical team now," whispered Sarah, one of the newer nurses who had become an advocate for Brant's presence. She adjusted the protective covering around his ears. "He hasn't moved an inch during the fitting." Dr. Rivers entered, carrying a tablet displaying Lila's latest test results. "Morning, everyone. Let's go through our modified protocol one more time." He gathered the staff around, while Veronica listened intently. "We've set up additional cameras here and here," he pointed to discrete mounted devices. "They'll track Brant's movements and reactions. Remember the signals we discussed. Head-on bed means heart rhythm changes. Pacing indicates blood pressure drops." The staff nodded, some taking notes. A surgical tech raised his hand. "What about the sterile field? Won't the dog compromise it?" "That's why we have this." Dr. Rivers gestured to Brant's protective gear. "It's similar to what they use for service dogs in operating rooms at Children's Hospital in Boston. The material is antimicrobial, and we'll be maintaining strict distance protocols." Lila stirred on the bed, her small face pinched with worry. "Mommy, is Brant coming with me?" Veronica moved to her daughter's side, smoothing back her curls. "He'll be nearby, baby. Look at his special outfit. He's dressed just like the doctor's." This brought a tired smile to Lila's face. He Looks funny." "Mrs. Hale," called the anesthesiologist, Dr. Chen. "We need to start the pre-surgical medication soon. Could you help keep Lila calm?" Veronica nodded, but before she could speak, Bront was already moving. He positioned himself where Lila could easily see him, his steady presence drawing her attention away from the medical preparations. "See how he does that?" Dr. Rivers commented to his team. "That's the emotional support aspect I mentioned. He's naturally reducing her anxiety, which helps us tremendously." The monitoring equipment beeped steadily as nurses attached additional sensors to Lila's small body. Bront's ears twitched at each new sound, but he maintained his calm demeanor. Veronica noticed how the staff had begun to watch him almost as carefully as they watched the machines. "Blood pressure's a little high," one nurse noted. "That's expected with pre-surgical stress," Dr. Chen replied. But Veronica saw him glance at Bront for confirmation. The dog remained relaxed, suggesting the elevation wasn't concerning. A new face appeared. The hospital's risk management director, Mr. Peterson. "Dr. Rivers, a word?" He gestured to the hallway, his expression stern. Veronica felt her stomach clench, but Dr. Rivers held up a reassuring hand. "I'll handle this," he said quietly. "Stay with Lila." Through the glass walls, she could see them engaged in intense discussion. Mr. Peterson's face was red as he jabbed his finger at some papers, but Dr. Rivers remained calm, methodically pointing to what appeared to be research documents. Sarah leaned close to Veronica. "Dr. Rivers spent half the night preparing documentation from other hospitals that have used service dogs in surgery. He's not letting anyone interfere at this point." The argument outside continued until Dr. Chen stepped out to join them. The anesthesiologist's contribution seemed to turn the tide. Mr. Peterson's shoulders finally slumped in resignation, and he walked away, shaking his head. Dr. Rivers returned, straightening his lab coat. "All sorted. Mr. Peterson just needed some additional reassurance about our safety protocols." He turned to the team. "Let's continue our preparations." As if on cue, Bront suddenly lifted his head and fixed his gaze on Lila's monitors. Within seconds, one of them began showing slight variations in her oxygen levels. "There, you see?" Dr. Rivers pointed excitedly. "He caught that before the alarm threshold. Adjust her oxygen flow, please." The nurse complied, and the numbers stabilized. Veronica watched in amazement as several staff members made notes about the timing of Bront's alert versus the machine's warning. "That's exactly why we need him," Dr. Rivers announced to the room. "Those precious extra seconds of warning could be crucial during the procedure." Lila's pre-surgical medications began to take effect, making her drowsy. Bront shifted position, maintaining eye contact with her as she fought to keep her eyes open. "It's okay, sweetie," Veronica soothed. "You can rest. Bront and I will be right here watching over you." "Promise?" Lila mumbled. "Promise," Veronica replied firmly, squeezing her daughter's hand. The surgical team continued their preparations with practiced efficiency, but now with an added layer of awareness. They worked around Bront as if he were another piece of essential medical equipment, which, Veronica realized, he had become. Dr. Rivers gathered everyone for a final briefing. "Remember, this is a team effort. Every observation counts, whether it comes from our machines, our medical training, or our four-legged early warning system. We're all here for one purpose, to give Lila the best possible care." The staff nodded in agreement, and Veronica felt a surge of gratitude. They had come so far from those first days of resistance and skepticism. Now, watching the seamless integration of modern medicine and Bront's instinctive abilities, she knew they were giving Lila every possible advantage. The operating room buzzed with focused energy as Dr. Rivers made the first careful incision. Veronica watched from behind the observation window, her hands pressed against the glass. Bront sat beside her, wearing his specially sanitized vest, his eyes fixed on Lila's small form on the operating table. The steady beep of monitors filled the room as the surgical team worked with practiced precision. Dr. Rivers' voice came through the intercom, calm and measured as he directed his team. "Retractor here, please. Careful now." Veronica's throat tightened as she watched. The room was a symphony of coordinated movement, nurses passing instruments, the anesthesiologist monitoring vital signs, surgical assistants maintaining the sterile field. Through it all, Bront remained perfectly still, only his eyes moving as he tracked every change in Lila's condition. "Blood pressure holding steady," Dr. Chen reported. "Oxygen saturation normal." 45 minutes into the procedure, Bront suddenly stiffened. His ears pricked forward, and a low whine escaped his throat. Veronica recognized the signal they'd all learned to trust. "Dr. Rivers," she called through the intercom. "Bront's alerting." The surgical team immediately heightened their attention. Dr. Rivers glanced at the monitors, which still showed normal readings. "What are you sensing, boy?" he muttered, not taking his hands from their delicate work. Seconds later, the first alarm sounded. Lila's heart rate began to climb rapidly. "BP dropping," Dr. Chen announced sharply. "Arrhythmia developing." "She's going into cardiac distress," Dr. Rivers said, his voice tight but controlled. "Push 1 milligram epinephrine. Stand by with the defibrillator." Bront's whine became more urgent. He pawed at the window, his eyes never leaving Lila. "VTAC," a nurse called out. The monitors erupted in a cacophony of warnings. "Beginning chest compressions," Dr. Rivers announced. "Clear the surgical field." Veronica pressed her hands to her mouth, fighting back tears as she watched the team work to save her daughter. Bront leaned against her legs, offering silent support even as he maintained his vigil. "Come on, baby," Veronica whispered. "Fight." Dr. Rivers' hands moved with incredible speed and precision. "Another milligram epi. Get me the internal paddles. We may need to pace her directly." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Through it all, Bront remained focused, his posture gradually relaxing as Lila's vital signs began to stabilize. "Rhythm returning to normal," Dr. Chen reported. "BP coming up." "Good catch, everyone," Dr. Rivers said. "Especially you, Bront. Those extra seconds of warning made all the difference." The surgical team exchanged relieved looks. They'd prepared for this possibility, but Bront's early warning had given them precious time to respond before the crisis peaked. "Continuing with the procedure," Dr. Rivers announced. "Let's complete this repair while she's stable." Veronica released a shaky breath, reaching down to scratch behind Bront's ears. "Good boy," she whispered. "Such a good boy." The surgery continued for another hour, with Bront remaining vigilant. Twice more he alerted to subtle changes, allowing the team to make adjustments before problems developed. Each time, Dr. Rivers acknowledged the dog's contribution with a quick nod. "Starting to close now," Dr. Rivers finally announced. "Vital signs are strong and steady." Veronica watched as they began the careful process of closing the surgical site. Bront had relaxed his stance, though he continued to watch attentively. "Mrs. Hale," Dr. Rivers spoke through the intercom. "The repair was successful. We'll move Lila to recovery shortly. I'd say both our girls did beautifully. Lila and modern medicine, working together with a rather remarkable canine assistant." The surgical team began their post-operative procedures, their movements more relaxed but still precise. Several of them glanced toward the observation window, offering thumbs-up gestures to Veronica and respectful nods to Bront. Dr. Chen approached the window. "That was incredible," he said through the intercom. "In 20 years of anesthesiology, I've never seen anything quite like it. Brant's warning gave us the jump on that cardiac episode. Without those extra seconds of preparation, things could have gone very differently. Veronica nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She hugged Brant tightly, burying her face in his fur as the tears finally came. Tears of relief, gratitude, and overwhelming love for this remarkable dog who had helped save her daughter's life. The operating room staff began preparing Lila for transfer to recovery. Their movements were efficient but gentle, treating her with the care she deserved. Through the window, Veronica could see the rise and fall of her daughter's chest. Steady, strong, and full of promise for the future. Dr. Rivers emerged from the OR, pulling down his surgical mask. His eyes were tired but triumphant. "That was textbook teamwork in there," he said. "Human and canine, working in perfect sync. I'll be documenting this case for the medical journals. It could change how we approach pediatric cardiac surgeries in the future." "Thank you," Veronica managed to say. "All of you, and especially you, Brant." The dog wagged his tail once, maintaining his professional demeanor but clearly pleased with a job well done. The recovery room hummed with the steady beep of monitors. Lila lay peacefully in the hospital bed, her small chest rising and falling in a gentle rhythm. Tubes and wires created a complex web around her, but her color had improved dramatically since the surgery. Brant lay stretched out beside the bed, his chin resting on his paws. His eyes remained fixed on Lila, occasionally flicking to the monitors when numbers shifted. Veronica sat in the chair next to them, one hand holding Lila's tiny fingers, while the other absently stroked Brant's fur. Dr. Rivers entered, his footsteps quiet on the linoleum floor. "Her latest readings are encouraging," he said, checking the charts. "The surgical repair is holding well, though we'll need to watch for post-operative complications over the next 48 hours. "Brant hasn't shown any signs of concern," Veronica replied, glancing at the dog. "He's been calm since they brought her in from surgery." "I've been thinking about that." Dr. Rivers pulled up another chair. "What we witnessed in the OR, it was remarkable. Brant detected that cardiac episode before our most sophisticated monitoring equipment could pick it up. That kind of early warning system?" He shook his head in amazement. A nurse entered to check Lila's vitals, and Brant's ears perked up slightly before settling again. The nurse smiled at him, a far cry from the initial resistance they'd faced from hospital staff. "The administration held an emergency meeting this morning," Dr. Rivers continued. "They've officially approved Brant's presence in the pediatric cardiac ward. They're even discussing a potential pilot program for other detection dogs." Veronica's eyes welled with tears. "I can't believe how far we've come from them trying to throw him out." "Sometimes it takes a miracle to change minds." Dr. Rivers reached over to pat Brant's head. "And this guy certainly provided that." A small moan from the bed drew their attention. Lila's eyelids fluttered, and Brant immediately sat up, tail wagging gently. Veronica leaned forward, squeezing her daughter's hand. "Mommy?" Lila's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm here, sweetheart. Brant's here too." Lila's lips curved in a tiny smile. "Good boy, Brant." The dog's tail wagged harder, but he maintained his position, seeming to understand that Lila needed calm and quiet. Dr. Rivers checked her pupils with a small light. "Everything looks good, Lila. How are you feeling?" "Sleepy." Her free hand reached toward Brant, and he carefully moved, closer so she could touch his fur. A team of residents arrived for rounds, clustering respectfully at the door. Dr. Rivers had turned Lila's case into a teaching opportunity, highlighting the importance of considering unconventional approaches in patient care. "As you can see," he addressed the group, "post-operative recovery is proceeding well. The patient's companion animal has been instrumental in monitoring for complications. His ability to detect subtle changes in her condition provided crucial early warnings during surgery. The residents scribbled notes, several of them watching Bront with obvious fascination. One young doctor raised her hand. "Dr. Rivers, could you elaborate on the specific indicators the dog responded to?" "We're still analyzing the data, but it appears he was detecting biochemical changes before they manifested in measurable symptoms. The research implications are significant." As if to demonstrate, Bront suddenly lifted his head, focusing intently on Lila. The monitors showed no immediate changes, but Dr. Rivers moved quickly to her bedside. "What are you seeing, boy?" he asked, beginning a thorough examination. Moments later, one of the monitors registered a slight drop in oxygen saturation. "Mild respiratory depression," Dr. Rivers announced to the residents. "Let's adjust her oxygen flow and reposition slightly." He turned to Veronica. "Another perfect catch by our canine colleague." The residents watched in amazement as the numbers stabilized after the adjustments. Bront settled back down, but remained alert. "The key here," Dr. Rivers continued his teaching, "is remaining open to unexpected allies in patient care. Sometimes the most valuable medical tools aren't machines at all." As the residents filed out, Veronica noticed several hospital administrators observing through the window. Their expressions showed none of their previous skepticism, only respect and growing understanding. One of them, the chief of surgery, entered the room. "Mrs. Hale, I wanted to personally apologize for our initial resistance to Bront's presence. We were—" He paused, choosing his words carefully, "overly rigid in our thinking." "Thank you," Veronica replied softly. "That means a lot." "We're developing new protocols," he continued, "to accommodate service animals with demonstrable medical detection abilities. Your experience here may help many other families in the future." Lila stirred again, reaching for Bront. The dog gently nuzzled her hand, his entire bearing one of protective devotion. "He saved my life, didn't he?" Lila asked, more alert now. "He sure did, sweetheart," Veronica answered, watching as Bront maintained his careful vigil. "He knew exactly what you needed, even when the rest of us weren't sure." Dr. Rivers made another note in Lila's chart. "Your recovery is already ahead of schedule. I think having Bront here is helping you heal faster, both physically and emotionally." The chief of surgery nodded, thoughtfully. The therapeutic benefits alone would justify his presence, combined with his detection abilities. He shook his head in wonder. "Well, we'd be fools not to recognize what's right in front of us." Veronica watched as Lila drifted back to sleep, one hand still resting on Bront's fur. The dog hadn't left her side since the surgery, catching every small change in her condition before it could become a problem. "I never imagined when we adopted him," she said quietly, "that he would become such an essential part of our lives. He's not just a pet anymore. He's Lila's guardian angel." The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting a warm glow over the peaceful scene. Bront remained at his post, his loyalty and love as steady as the monitors tracking Lila's recovery. In his presence, the scary hospital room felt more like a sanctuary, watched over by an extraordinary protector who had proven his worth beyond any doubt. Later that evening, as Lila rested peacefully, Veronica sat in the window alcove of the hospital room. The city lights twinkled below, and she found herself lost in thought, replaying the whirlwind of events that had brought them here. Dr. Rivers entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Veronica and settled into the chair beside her. "Thought you could use this." "Thank you." She wrapped her hands around the warm cup, grateful for the gesture. "It feels like a lifetime ago when we first rushed her in here. I was so scared." "You've come a long way since then," Dr. Rivers observed, glancing at Bront, who remained steadfast at Lila's bedside. "We all have." Veronica nodded, remembering the overwhelming fear that had gripped her that first night. When they tried to remove Bront, I felt so torn. Everything I knew about hospitals and rules said I should listen, but something deeper told me he needed to stay. "That's what makes you an exceptional mother," Dr. Rivers said softly. "You trusted your instincts, even when they went against conventional wisdom." "I couldn't have done it without your support," she admitted. "Having a doctor willing to look beyond the standard protocols made all the difference." He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Well, you taught me something important too. Sometimes the best medicine isn't found in textbooks." Across the room, Lila stirred slightly. Bront's ears perked up, but after a moment he relaxed, clearly satisfied that all was well. Veronica watched this interaction with a new appreciation. "You know," she said, "before all this, I used to think being strong meant having all the answers. Now I realize it's about having the courage to question things, to stand up for what you believe is right, even when everyone else thinks you're wrong." Dr. Rivers nodded thoughtfully. "That's the kind of strength that changes lives. Look at what your advocacy has accomplished. Not just for Lila, but for the whole hospital. We're completely revising our policies on service animals and medical detection dogs." "It's funny," Veronica mused, sipping her coffee. "When I adopted Lila, I promised to always protect her. I never imagined that keeping that promise would mean fighting the very system I thought would help us." "Sometimes the biggest battles are fought in hospital hallways, not operating rooms," Dr. Rivers agreed. "But you never wavered, even when it would have been easier to give in." Veronica thought about the countless meetings with administrators, the tense conversations with staff, the nights spent worrying she was making the wrong choice. "There were moments I doubted myself," she admitted. "But every time I looked at Bront with Lila, I knew in my heart it was right." "That's the thing about intuition," Dr. Rivers said. "It often sees what our logical minds miss. As doctors, we're trained to trust data and procedures, but your experience with Bront has reminded me that there's more to healing than just medicine." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Lila sleep peacefully. Her color was better now, her breathing steady and strong. The monitors showed stable vital signs, a far cry from the crisis they'd faced just days ago. "I've been thinking about writing up Lila's case for a medical journal," Dr. Rivers mentioned. "With your permission, of course. The medical community needs to hear this story." Veronica smiled. From skeptic to believer. Quite a journey for a distinguished physician. He chuckled softly. "Well, good science means being willing to change your mind when presented with compelling evidence, and Bront has certainly provided that." "Speaking of evidence," Veronica said, reaching for her phone, "I've been keeping a detailed log of all Bront's alerts and how they corresponded to changes in Lila's condition. I thought it might help with your research." Dr. Rivers's eyes lit up with interest as he looked at her notes. "This is incredible documentation. You've captured patterns we might have missed otherwise." He glanced at her with newfound respect. "You know, you'd make an excellent researcher yourself." "I'm just a mom trying to do right by her daughter," Veronica replied modestly. "You're far more than that," he countered. "You're an advocate, an observer, and someone who isn't afraid to challenge the status quo when necessary. Those are valuable qualities in any field." A nurse came in to check Lila's vitals, moving quietly to avoid disturbing her sleep. Bront acknowledged her with a friendly tail wag, a far cry from the tense standoffs of earlier days. The staff had come to appreciate his presence, often consulting his reactions when assessing Lila's condition. "It's amazing how much has changed," Veronica reflected. "Not just with Lila's health, but with everything. The way the hospital views Bront, the relationships we've built here." She paused, meeting Dr. Rivers's gaze. "The people we've come to trust." He held her look for a moment, understanding passing between them. Their shared experience had forged a connection that went beyond doctor and patient's mother. They'd become partners in Lila's care, each bringing their own expertise, his medical knowledge and her maternal intuition, to create something greater than either could achieve alone. The night settled around them, peaceful and full of promise. Lila slept on, her recovery a testament to the power of following one's heart, even when the path seemed uncertain. Veronica felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that her courage to stand firm had helped save her daughter's life. Through the hospital window, morning sunlight streamed in, casting a warm glow on Lila's recovery room. Bront lay curled at the foot of her bed, his brindle coat gleaming. The once controversial shelter dog had become something of a celebrity in the pediatric ward, with staff members regularly stopping by to marvel at his abilities. "Look, Mommy!" Lila's voice rang out clear and strong, a sound that still brought tears to Veronica's eyes. "Nurse Jenny brought Bront a special badge." She pointed to the official hospital volunteer tag, now hanging from Bront's collar. Veronica moved closer to examine it, running her fingers over the engraved words. Bront, Medical Detection Assistant. The simple piece of plastic represented so much more than just hospital clearance. It was validation of every instinct she'd fought to defend, every confrontation she'd endured. "He earned it," Jenny said from the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Dr. Rivers just finished a presentation to the board about Bront's contribution to Lila's case. They're implementing new protocols for working with detection dogs, and Bront's success story is the foundation for the entire program." Veronica felt a surge of pride mixed with gratitude. Who would have thought that scruffy shelter dog would change hospital policy? "Sometimes heroes come in unexpected packages," Jenny replied, checking Lila's vital signs with practiced efficiency. "Your numbers look fantastic today, sweetie. Bront knew what he was doing all along." Lila reached down to scratch behind Bront's ears. The dog's tail thumped steadily against the bed, his eyes never leaving his young charge. The bond between them had only grown stronger through their ordeal. "Dr. Rivers says we might get to go home next week," Lila announced excitedly. "Can Bront sleep in my room?" "I think he's earned that privilege," Veronica laughed, "though I doubt we could keep him anywhere else if we tried." The transformation in her daughter amazed her daily. Lila's cheeks had regained their color, her energy returning in steady waves. The critical surgery that had nearly claimed her life now seemed like a distant nightmare, though Veronica knew she would never forget those terrifying moments when everything hung in the balance. "Mrs. Hale?" A young resident appeared in the doorway. "There's a reporter here from the Tribune. They're doing a story about Bront and the new detection dog program. Would you be willing to talk to them?" Veronica hesitated, remembering the early days when she'd felt so alone in her conviction about Bront's importance. Now, that same intuition was being celebrated as groundbreaking. "Tell them yes," she decided. People need to know that sometimes the most important medical breakthroughs aren't about technology or new drugs. Sometimes they're about trusting your heart and fighting for what you believe in. The resident nodded and disappeared. Moments later, Dr. Rivers entered, his face bright with accomplishment. "The board meeting was a complete success," he announced. "We're establishing a permanent program for integrating certified detection dogs into patient care. Bront's going to help train the hospital staff on working with them." "He's come a long way from the shelter," Veronica observed, watching as Bront gently nuzzled Lila's hand. "Just like all of us." "You know," Dr. Rivers said thoughtfully, "when you first insisted on keeping him here, I thought you were letting emotion cloud your judgment. I've never been happier to be proven wrong." "That means a lot coming from you," Veronica replied. Their eyes met, sharing an understanding that had deepened through their shared experience. What had started as a professional relationship had evolved into something warmer, built on mutual respect and trust. Lila's recovery journey had changed them all. Veronica saw it in the confidence of her own decisions, in the way she now trusted her instincts without second-guessing. She saw it in Dr. Rivers's willingness to look beyond traditional medical protocols and in the hospital staff's growing acceptance of unconventional approaches to healing. But perhaps the most profound transformation was in Bront himself. The uncertain shelter dog had found his purpose, his natural abilities recognized and valued. He carried himself with quiet dignity now, aware of his important role, but never straying from his primary mission: protecting Lila. The researcher from the veterinary college called again, Dr. Rivers mentioned. They're fascinated by Bront's ability to detect subtle changes in cardiac function. They want to study him, see if they can identify what markers he's responding to. As long as it doesn't interfere with his primary job, Veronica gestured toward Lila, who had dozed off with one hand resting on Bront's head. Of course not, Dr. Rivers assured her. They understand he's first and foremost a family member. Speaking of which, the hospital wants to officially recognize him at next month's fundraising gala. They're calling him a pioneer in integrated medical care. Veronica shook her head in amazement. All I wanted was to keep my daughter safe. I never imagined we'd end up changing hospital policy. That's often how the most meaningful changes happen, Dr. Rivers observed. Not through committees and studies, but through people willing to stand up for what they believe in, even when it's difficult. They watched as Bront adjusted his position slightly, maintaining physical contact with Lila while settling into a more comfortable pose. His vigilance never wavered, even as his role had expanded beyond their small family to impact the larger medical community. You know what this means, don't you? Dr. Rivers asked with a smile. Every time a detection dog helps save a life in this hospital, it'll be because you refuse to back down. That's quite a legacy. Veronica felt tears welling up in her eyes. We all did it together, she said softly. You, me, the staff who came around to supporting us. But mostly... She reached out to stroke Bront's fur. It was this extraordinary, ordinary dog who showed us all what loyalty really means. The morning light continued to fill the room, illuminating this small family that had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger. Bront's presence had transformed from a source of controversy to a symbol of hope, proving that sometimes the most powerful medicine comes in unexpected forms. Veronica sat in the hospital's small garden courtyard, watching Lila chase butterflies while Bront trotted faithfully beside her. The sight still brought tears to her eyes, not of fear anymore, but of profound gratitude. Just 3 months ago, she'd been terrified of losing her daughter. Now, Lila's laughter rang clear and strong across the courtyard. "Mommy, look!" Lila called out, her curls bouncing as she pointed to a particularly large monarch butterfly. "Bront's being so gentle with them." Indeed, the dog who had once been deemed a nuisance by hospital staff now moved with careful grace, matching his pace to Lila's still recovering strength. His eyes never left her, but his posture was relaxed, confident in her improving health. Dr. Rivers appeared beside Veronica's bench, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "I thought you might need this," he said, offering her one. "The discharge paperwork is finally complete." "I can't believe we're really going home," Veronica admitted, accepting the coffee. "There were times I wasn't sure we'd ever get here." "You never gave up, though," he remarked, settling beside her. "That's what made all the difference." The hospital looked different now, less intimidating, more like a place of healing and hope. The administrative wing, where she'd once fought desperate battles to keep Bront by Lila's side, had become the site of regular meetings about expanding the detection dog program. Signs now hung in the lobby explaining the presence of certified medical support animals, with Bront's photo featured prominently. The research team called again, Dr. Rivers mentioned. They're amazed by the data they've collected on Brant's ability to detect cardiac irregularities. 3 other hospitals have already reached out about starting similar programs. He's going to help so many people, Veronica smiled, watching as Brant guided Lila away from a slightly uneven patch of ground. But he'll always be our hero first. The morning sun caught the new tag on Brant's collar, an official hospital credential marking him as the founding member of their cardiac detection program. Beside it hung the medal from the American Heart Association, recognizing his role in pioneering new approaches to patient care. The nurses made this for Lila, Dr. Rivers said, pulling out a handmade book. It's the story of her brave dog, illustrated by the pediatric ward staff. Veronica flipped through the pages, touching the carefully drawn pictures of a brindle dog standing guard over a small girl in a hospital bed. The final page showed them all together, Lila, Brant, Veronica, and even Dr. Rivers, surrounded by hearts and stars. "They got your smile just right," she teased, showing him the illustration. "Well, I've had more reason to smile lately," he replied softly, his hand finding hers on the bench between them. Their relationship had evolved naturally, built on shared battles and quiet moments of support. He'd been there through the darkest nights, respecting her instincts when others dismissed them. She'd watched him grow from skeptic to advocate, challenging his own preconceptions about medicine and healing. Lila came running over, slightly out of breath, but with healthy color in her cheeks. "Dr. Rivers, are you coming to my welcome home party tomorrow?" "Wouldn't miss it," he assured her, helping her climb up onto the bench between them. "I heard there might be special dog treats for Brant, too." "He deserves all the treats," Lila declared, wrapping her arms around the dog's neck as he sat patiently beside her. "He's the best dog in the whole world." Brant's tail wagged gently at the praise, but his eyes remained alert, constantly monitoring his young charge. The shelter workers who had once labeled him as just another mixed breed would hardly recognize him now, not just in his official capacity, but in the quiet confidence he carried. "The social worker stopped by earlier," Veronica mentioned. "She's using our case as an example in her presentation about the importance of listening to families' insights about patient care." "You changed more than just Lila's outcome," Dr. Rivers noted. "You changed how this whole hospital approaches healing." They watched as Lila leaned against Brant, her eyes growing heavy with the healthy fatigue of play rather than illness. The dog adjusted his position to support her weight, a living pillow of unwavering devotion. "Ready to head up and finish packing?" Veronica asked gently. Lila nodded, but then sat up straight with sudden urgency. "Wait, we have to say goodbye to everyone first." The farewell tour took them through the cardiac ward, where nurses rushed to hug Lila and slip Brant extra treats. Past the physical therapy room, where she'd taken her first post-surgery steps with Brant's steady presence beside her. Through the children's playroom, where other young patients now had regular visits from certified therapy dogs, inspired by Brant's example. Finally, they reached Lila's room, soon to be occupied by another child who would benefit from the changes their family had helped create. The walls still held some of Lila's artwork, pictures of Brant wearing an imaginary superhero cape. "Can I leave these up?" Lila asked. "So the next kid knows about Brant?" "I think that's a wonderful idea," Dr. Rivers answered, lifting her up so she could adjust a drawing that had started to curl at the corner. As they gathered the last of their belongings, Veronica felt the full weight of their journey. They were leaving with so much more than they'd arrived with, not just Lila's restored health, but stronger bonds, deeper trust, and the knowledge that one person's conviction could spark meaningful change. Brant waited patiently by the door, his posture that of a guardian rather than just a pet. He'd found his true purpose in this place, transforming from an unwanted shelter dog to a recognized pioneer in medical care. But more importantly, he'd shown them all the healing power of unconditional love and unwavering loyalty.